Everyone, welcome back into another NBA DFS season. You got myself, Eric Polzin here at 9 to 5 Sports, and we also have Chuck Silver here as well. We had you guys covered last year. We're going to have you guys covered this year as well. Chuck, any opening comments?
I have been waiting for the NBA season to start. Very excited. Excited to do the first show with you. You're a great host. So, anybody watching, thanks for being here. You're in for a great season.
Chuck makes me look good, guys. Don't let him fool you. But let's just talk about kind of the preseason stuff, at least for just in general for NBA. Is there anything in particular? I mean, I guess especially with these first four teams that we're talking about, is there anything that is like standing out to you, noteworthy, before we really dive into it?
There's a few things with each team. I think some of the ownerships tonight are being a little bit, I don't know how to say it, but kind of they're taking into account too much of what happened in a small sample from the preseason. Okay. Overall, I don't think it's going to carry over too much into the season. Maybe it will, but the ownerships were pretty concentrated. So the low-owned plays that we like, that the model recommends, are going to be even more powerful. So it's just something to keep in mind.
So you were playing in the preseason, though?
Yeah, played in the preseason. Played mostly the small stuff, but the contests were all small anyway. But had like 15 takedowns. If you're in the Discord, you should have seen them. So small field is the key, I think, to doing well in NBA DFS. Take some shots in the large stuff, and we should do pretty well.
I was taking a peek at the plugins, and I was like, all right, he's got to be doing at least a little bit decent here for the preseason. I didn't play at all, so. It's like the polar opposite for me with NFL, where NFL preseason, I just go all in, and I don't really put out too much content for that. I'm just focused on, entering DFS contests. I know you're familiar with that balance, but for preseason NBA, I'm like, I don't know if I want to go in on these weird rotations that these coaches are putting out there. I don't know. So we're going to have a balance here is what I'm trying to say, guys. I don't even want to say be biased, but I don't have any preseason bias, and Chuck is going to have an edge on really some good values that people aren't probably going to be on. So I think that's going to be a great balance for us for this video.
Well, I will say, I think just using the Occupy model at all gives us an edge over the rest of the field. I think that a lot of people are using projections from other sites, and that results in those low-owned plays that look good over there not becoming low-owned plays anymore. The ownerships, like I mentioned, they're going to become even more condensed, especially with all this new sim stuff going on. And so taking our advice here and using the model, I think alone, that's already an edge you're going to have this season.
So what is your kind of thoughts, since you brought it up, just on the Sims? I know we'll get into the slate here, but it is a small 2-game slate. What are your thoughts on that? Because I feel like it's overrated. I don't know. I just haven't been able to really get gung-ho about it.
Here's the thing. I think that if someone is already very familiar with how to beat NBA DFS, it's going to help them a little bit more. If someone is a more casual player and they're trying to use the Sims, they're probably not going to be taking advantage of it as well as they can. And if the Sims become even more popular, I'm not sure how much it's going to be in NBA. We'll have to see over the first couple of weeks. But as they become more popular, I think that it becomes, like I mentioned, it's going to be even more powerful to just listen to the off projection advice. When the Sims are wrong, they're going to be wrong. And if we can find things that the Sims can't find in the data, then it's just going to help us even more. So we're going to be wrong sometimes, but the things that we're right about are going to be more powerful than the things we're wrong about hurt us, if that makes sense.
No, I think that makes sense. And really, to me, it like for NBA, it's tough to see it really dominating, I guess, just with all the little nuances of it, the late minute changes that occur, like that pops up faster, I would say, like humanly. I don't know, there's just easier pivots that we can make, that we know what to make, rather than maybe the Sims are going to jump on right away. I don't know. I feel like it's been getting too much hype. That's me though.
I mean, so for me, I think the number one biggest edge in NBA DFS is taking advantage of late swap and using late swap correctly. We're not late swapping just to late swap. We're late swapping because we're either, most of the time it's going to be because a better play pops up later that we maybe didn't have at lock, or let's say we have some lineups that aren't doing well. We want to pivot off the chalk in the later games and maybe try to get some min cashes out of our lineups. But the second biggest edge, I think, is that the minutes projections on most sites are just, it's like I dive into every team's minutes projections every day, and it's just, there's things in rotations and matchups that might change game to game, or maybe something happened in the last couple games that's not going to be relevant today. And so if we can find those little edges, then it's like 2-3 minutes in minutes projections takes a guy from being not in our player pool at all to, maybe showing up in half our lineups or showing up in half our lineups to coming down to 10%, something like that. So
yeah, I agree with that. That makes perfect sense. And let's just do another little preview part. So Chuck already mentioned that he dominated the preseason. It seemed like there. He also took down a couple GPPs during the regular season. For me myself, my specialty I would say is the beginning and end of the season NBA DFS. I was crushing it the last time I was on this channel going live for that late season NBA DFS. So I'm excited. I don't know. Like I said, I feel like this is a perfect balance for the start of the season. Maybe not for this 2-game slate. What is your thoughts on the 2-game slate?
Well, it's really annoying that they have all those tickets, the satellite tickets. I won a bunch of tickets on both sites for the first night, and it's a 2-gamer where, I think people are going to try too hard to get unique. Like, you do want to aim for that solo takedown, but if you're forcing it too much to a point, it's not going to work. I mean, there's a lot of 1% plays that the model thinks are okay today, but it's not necessary to play one in every single lineup. We can still get a lineup that maybe is only duped a couple times, that just doesn't have those super low owned plays. Just find the right combination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I gotcha. And I'm not sure if the comment is working right now for me to be able to pull it up on the live stream here for you guys. So apologies. It's the first live stream. We'll get that figured out for next week, or it might just be taking a while to load since it's the first time in a while. So we'll answer your questions as they come in. Just wanted to let you guys know that. But let's go ahead and get into the slate. So we're at the news and notes segment of this video. The biggest news items that I think we have, Bradley Beal, Draymond Green. How much is that going to change the slate? I would say we don't really know for the Suns, but let's try to cover that.
So Bradley Beal, I thought that they ruled him out, but then they said after that he's unlikely to play. So yeah, I've been building as if he's not in tonight. And on DraftKings especially, it's making Devin Booker and Kevin Durant really pop. But so everyone knows to play Devin Booker and Kevin Durant because they're just too cheap. I mean, all the studs are too cheap tonight overall, but we can find an edge by trying to figure out which Suns role players might have a larger role tonight. And I think a lot of people are going to flock to Eric Gordon. He had a pretty good preseason, but Grayson Allen is showing up at 3% projected ownership on DraftKings. I'd be shocked if he came in that low, but I think that's a spot that I'm going to try to get to a little bit more tonight.
Okay, and then what about Yusuf Nurk? Because for those of you that aren't familiar, I do a lot of props coverage on my own channel, and he is someone that I was really shocked at how low his line was, and I thought that once like Draymond Green and Bradley Beal were ruled out, we would see his numbers go up, and they didn't bump it at all. If anyone's curious, like Prize Picks Underdog, they had set like 27 for fantasy points. I felt like that was too low, and if we look at the pricing on DraftKings and FanDuel on this slate, DraftKings is kind of agreeing with like Prize Picks and their projection and even Underdog, whereas FanDuel, they're maybe saying, he's going to have a better game. What's your thought on him? Because I thought he was someone that was standing out.
I mean, I'm pretty interested in Yusuf Nurkic. We saw him display a pretty good ceiling last season, and he even had one super ceiling in the preseason game, put up 40-plus fantasy points in less minutes. It's just a question of he's new to this team. It's a new situation, and we're not quite sure how much he's really going to play. I mean, if he plays 26 minutes, he's an okay play. If he ends up playing 34, then he's one of the best plays on the slate. And tonight is unique because one of the edges that I really tried to exploit at the very beginning of last season was players like Nikola Jokic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Luka Doncic being underpriced. And we see Jokic coming in at 10K tonight. And it's just in 2 weeks, Jokic is going to be 11K plus. And so Jokic is a spot we want to get to. He's projected for 54% ownership right now. And I'm actually surprised Anthony Davis is only projected for 26. We'll have to see how that goes. And so what I was originally thinking was because so much ownership is going to go to those guys in the center spot, we can play one in the flex, but Nurkic might be a little bit under-owned today, and his mid-range price makes him he's a pretty good GPP play. It's boom or bust. He might do terrible, or he might, be the top play of the night.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, to me, that's kind of the appeal. He's boomer bust at like a weird price tag that people won't be able to end up on. And like, I think a lot of people probably will try to do what you said, which is play Nikola Jokic and probably play Anthony Davis a little bit too. It's the first game. We don't have to worry about injuries.
Hopefully.
Right? Yeah. What about the Golden State Warriors situation. So Draymond Green is out. Are we just assuming that that's going to mean Looney again getting a bunch of work, or who is going to be taking over for the center spot?
It's hard to know. I think it.
Wait. We should mention kind of the starting lineup that they're trying to run out, because Klay Thompson is playing power forward, and then they're trying to have Draymond Green play center. I don't see that working out season long, but that's kind of why I'm mentioning Looney wasn't projected to be the starter. Now he might be. So, but sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think it depends if, Golden State wants to go with that small lineup where maybe they're even running Jonathan Kuminga at center or Andrew Wiggins at center. I don't know if Phoenix was going to want to go small, run KD at the center spot, and they're just not going to have a center on the court. We usually see them play Nurkic. It was in the preseason. It was Eubanks or Metu, one of those three at the center. So it'll be interesting to see what they want to do. We know that the Warriors' death lineup, they do like to go small, and with Chris Paul this year, it just throws another wrench in the mix. So we'll have to see. The first game. It's hard to predict, but there's some things that we can, I guess, kind of predict. But either way, Kevon Looney at 5,300, basically on both sites, is going to be a pretty solid pivot. I mean, he's coming in for 41% ownership, so it's a little bit high, but we don't have much clear value, and the clear value we do have, I think a lot of people are going to get to. So Kevon Looney, it's fine GPP play.
Okay. So for those that might not be familiar with how we did the videos last year, we're going to try to do them the same as well. We're going to start out with the news and notes like we just did, and then we're going to get into the guards, then touch on the forwards, then touch on the centers. Then we'll give you guys kind of our closing thoughts, maybe some core plays, maybe high upside GPP plays that we're going to be on and whatnot. Those nuances will come at the end. If you guys have questions, get those in. We'll touch on those at the end of each segment. Like I said, I can't pull them up currently, unfortunately, on the live stream. Well, let's check. Yeah, I probably just need a refreshing on my end, but I don't want to risk that for the first live stream of the year. Just a couple of comments in there. I don't know. Do you want to highlight those or mention those?
Yeah. So Nurkic and Looney scare you, Swerve baby? Do we think the Suns and Golden State go small with KD and Kuminga? It's the first game of the season, and it's kind of a different, it's mostly the same Warriors team, but a lot it's different. So I'm not quite sure what they're going to end up doing. I do think that the Suns probably run a real center for a lot of the game. So Kevon Looney is going to have to play a lot. It's just a question of, is Golden State comfortable matching up Kuminga or maybe Andrew Wiggins at center spot to guard those guys? The backups probably specifically. I would think that they want Looney on the court to guard Nurkic most of the time.
Did Looney get into foul trouble a lot last year? I can't remember. I remember he played low minutes. He was a good point per minute player, but was that due to foul trouble? I know it was just due to kind of rotation and whatnot, but was that due to foul trouble as well?
I actually don't quite remember, but
yeah, it sounds right. I don't know.
I would guess it's just due to rotations. They did have Draymond Green, who they're comfortable running at center, but they don't have him tonight. So what do we have Looney projected for? We have him projected for 28 minutes. It actually seems kind of a high minutes projection, but if he ends up exceeding that, then he's going to look even better. And like I mentioned, same thing with Nurkic. A lot of the center ownership is going to be going to Jokic, and apparently it's going to be going to Looney too, but I'm interested to see if he actually comes in at that 41%.
Yeah, and I think you bring up kind of a good point with just like the minutes projection there. If you guys are in there using the lineup builder and you guys want to bump up or bump down a projection, I would say like the reason why I think I do well at the beginning and end of the season is because the projections aren't going to be as perfect or as ideal as they typically are middle of the season, heck, even 2 weeks into the season. So if you guys want to just, hit the ticker up or down a little bit, that's fine. Don't go crazy with it. Obviously, typically speaking, the day is going to be correct. But if there's ever time to do that, early season, end of season.
Yeah, and if you're using the builder, play with it. Don't just run one build and pick your lineups from that. Manipulate the OF index and run a few builds, change the settings, and just see what you get.
Yeah, that's honestly, the people probably just don't do that. A lot of people come in, run it, and that's it. But let's go ahead and get into the guard plays. So obviously a smaller slate. There's not that much to really touch on. The OF index is having Curry pop up as the best play, then Devin Booker, then Jamal Murray, then Chris Paul, Klay Thompson, Eric Gordon. So Eric Gordon kind of clear-cut value with that, but also Chris Paul at a cheap price tag. Gary Payton's at a low kind of sub 4K range. I guess let's start at the top. Like, where would you be starting with these guards? And we're just looking at the DraftKings guards because they're all kind of price spaced out. And so I feel like it's very unique there. Obviously, Devin Booker probably rolling with, but what is your kind of thoughts there?
So, number one, Steph Curry, top of the model. He's one of my favorite players in the NBA. I'm wearing a Klay Thompson jersey right now, but I mean, 22% ownership is pretty good for Steph Curry. But even before I saw the model and the ownership stuff today, I knew I was going to be targeting Devin Booker. His price on DraftKings is just kind of insane. I mean, this guy could be 10K in 2 weeks, and he's 8,300 tonight, and he's coming in for less than 50% ownership. And so I think Devin Booker is the spot I want to target the most. When looking specifically at the guard position. I mean, Chris Paul projected for 84% ownership is kind of insane, but DraftKings did mess up his price, 5,600. We'll have to see if he actually plays those 32 and a half minutes we haven't projected for. It seems pretty reasonable. But Chris Paul and Devin Booker, I think, are the two spots I'm going to be getting to the most at the guard position tonight.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, Devin Booker, I feel like we just have to play, so that kind of leaves Jamal Murray at kind of a forgotten spot, I would say, at his price. He's someone that could put up, I don't want to say the top guard numbers because I just don't see that happening tonight. But it's not that difficult of a matchup, I don't think.
Well, the problem is, like, all the studs are too cheap. I think that they got the pricing completely wrong across the board, and so it forces us to make decisions. And Jamal Murray's price, like, I think so. Jamal Murray's price is a little bit too cheap for him, but I think Devin Booker's price is more extreme, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. So let's say, there's no values that would really pop in there that you would potentially want to be on because we're trying to jam in studs. Like, I know you mentioned Grayson Allen, Chris Braun. Probably not him. Gabe Vincent at all. I guess the data doesn't like those plays, but
yeah, I think when let me just pull up my model real quick. I ran some builds right before here. I want to say, so Grayson Allen is a guy that I manipulated to get more of. It's just if he actually is coming in at that low ownership, then I'm going to be well over the field on him. And then a lot of these other guys, it's like if Moses Moody comes in for his 15, 16, what do we have Moses Moody for? 14 minutes and hits a few threes at his price tag. Like, we're not necessarily looking for these cheap values at guard specifically to go off to be in the winning lineup. It's more that they allow us to fit in more studs, right?
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. It's a tough one. I mean, Austin Reeves at under 10% ownership, he's not quite a value at 6,100, but I'm pretty interested in that ownership. Same with D'Angelo. Eric Gordon, he did well in the preseason, so like I mentioned, I think people are going to get there a little bit more than they should. And so that might be a spot I'm trying to get away from a little bit. And when I say I'm trying to get away, he's projected for 44% ownership. If I have 30% in my lineups, then I'm under the field. And so I'm not going to fade these guys completely. I'm just going to have less than everyone else.
So that brings up two things. One, Chuck plays more GPPs. I'm more of a single entry type of guy. So when he says that stuff, that's what he's trying to get at. Whereas me, it's more of a definitive yes or no. Just be aware of that. Also, who would you rather have as your number 3? Bradley Beal or Austin Reeves? I don't know if you saw that segment.
I did not.
I think it was on First Take or something. It was a weird one.
Yeah, it's like Bradley Beal is pretty clearly the better basketball player. It's just a matter of how he's going to fit in with whoever the number 1 and 2 are. I'm a Lakers fan, so my biased answer is going to be Austin Reeves. But I am aware Bradley Beal is better at basketball than Austin Reeves. So,
all right, one more question here. So, I know Christian Wood's listed as a center on this slate, but which is he actually going to be the number 3 Reeves? Because Russell obviously sucked, but could he step up this year? Is Christian Wood actually going to, step up? Or I don't know. I like their backups, I should say, just for the Lakers. I don't know. I feel like Reeves could take a step back this year, where everyone else, all those kind of guys that we used to like in DFS that got traded to the Lakers, I feel like they could all just kind of have their moments this year.
Well, what do we have Christian Wood for? Because in the preseason, it seemed like he was trying really hard to do the things he would do on other teams, and he just couldn't do it. But it is encouraging to hear that Darvin Ham likes him. We haven't projected for 17 minutes. I mean, if it's just at his price tag, I think that's a player that I'll have 0 of tonight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if he was projected at 22 minutes, then maybe we could get to him as like a unique GPP play. Yeah.
I mean, we've seen Christian Wood put up monster scores in low minutes, so it's definitely possible that he gets there. But, Jackson Hayes is 3,600 on DraftKings, projected for 1% ownership. Not that I think he's a great play, but he probably deserves more than 1% ownership. And if he comes in, shoots 4 for 5, pulls down 6 rebounds and a block, that might be enough because it helps you fit in the studs. So
Yeah, we'll just stick with the center talk here. I try to do forwards, but I actually don't mind the idea. I thought that's going back to what I was just saying about the Lakers. It's like I feel like they are casually kind of loaded with depth. Like Jackson Hayes was someone that when you knew he was going to get minutes, you would jam in because he was typically a value. Christian Wood at times last year we would do that. I don't know. I like their depth, but obviously Anthony Davis on this slate at 8.9 on DraftKings is insane. We're going to be loading up on him. I guess the question would be, what would we do on FanDuel between those two? Jokic and Davis, sorry.
Right. Well, the thing is on FanDuel, Anthony Davis has power forward eligibility, so we can still fit in those two. But looking at the price discrepancy between them, Jokic is 11.5, Anthony Davis is 11.2. Yeah, Jokic is clearly going to be the more appealing play, but also the ownership, Jokic at 41%, Anthony Davis at 17. So I think it kind of evens out where maybe Anthony Davis is a little bit overpriced, but if other people aren't going to play him, we've seen him have a ceiling. LeBron always talks about Anthony Davis has to be the best player on this team for us to be successful. I'm still going to get there on FanDuel. I'll probably have lineups with both Jokic and Anthony Davis.
Yeah, when we highlight the ownership difference, I mean, that's kind of crazy. Half the ownership. I mean, that's appealing to me if you play him in the center spot there on FanDuel. We already mentioned kind of my love for Yusuf Nurk there. What about Drew? Is it Eubanks or Ebanks?
I think it's Eubanks, but I don't know how many times I've heard it out loud. So
how do you the tight end for the Atlanta Falcons? His last name is Smith. How do you say his first name?
Janu? Is it not Janu?
I thought so for his whole career until I started listening to games this year, and they started calling him. I'm gonna butcher it. Jonu, or it's not Jonu Smith, like it's Jonu Smith. Like I don't know, it's just like, or maybe the announcers have just been pronouncing it weird. I don't know. It's just like mind blowing, but
it's good to know.
Yeah, we have a lot of names, guys. We talk a lot of names here. Just a reminder.
Yeah, we're gonna get some wrong, and I do it sometimes on purpose to be funny. Like I'm gonna say Demantis. I know it's Demontis, but it sounds better.
And then you get a name stuck in your head, and you just roll with it. Yeah. I feel like it's kind of straightforward for the centers. I mean, Davis, DraftKings, we're playing. No love for Dario Saric, right? I mean, he's a point per minute player, projected to get 16 minutes. Could you play him at the power forward or utility spot on DraftKings to really fit in the studs?
To be honest, I was actually surprised he's projected for that low of ownership. So I'm gonna be a little bit over the field on Dario Saric. Dario Saric? Yeah. No.
There we go. It's not even pronounced Sarge. What are we talking about?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about this guy, and he's going to play 15 minutes, so we'll see what he does.
I mean, could he get any center minutes? I mean, probably not. They have him listed as a center. But, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility. Like, he could... That's the thing. Like, we see in preseason, they're messing with these rotations and whatnot, trying to see what works. Could he step up into 20 minutes instead of 16?
I definitely think he could, yeah. Especially, so I watched a lot of the Warriors preseason games, and they tried to give a chance to, I don't even think the guy's showing up in the model, Trace Jackson Davis, I think is his name. Young guy on the Warriors, big guy. But Dario Saric looked awesome, and he can stretch the floor. He can hit the three for them, which is a big part of their offense. And so that's one guy that could easily exceed his minutes projection by a few minutes tonight.
Yeah. All right, so let's go ahead and move on into the forwards here. Let's see if we have any questions in here. First, thoughts on guards on FanDuel. We kind of mentioned that, Glenn. Do you just want to recap that real quick, Chuck?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot less clear on FanDuel just because FanDuel's pricing is a lot more tight. But, I mean, for example, the biggest difference is Chris Paul projected for 84% ownership on DraftKings at 5,600. That seems fine, even though it's super high. But projected for 45% on FanDuel at 8K, I'm probably not playing Chris Paul on FanDuel at all tonight. And if I'm just fading him, like I'm already getting leverage over the field if they're really going to play him that much. But we can still go to Devin Booker at 9,600, Steph Curry at 10K. It's just a question of balancing them with the big man plays who are also expensive. And so kind of, where's the value? Do we have more value at guard, or do we have more value at the big man position?
All right. And then we'll just move on into the forwards here, guys. The forwards, I would say to me, probably the best priced of the slate, and I say that with some hesitation because it's small, 2-game slate. There is some kind of soft pricing still. We already mentioned Kevin Durant. I'd say MPJ is pretty cheap. Andrew Wiggins is a GPP play. Torian Prince is going to be starting. He's pulling in a bunch of ownership. Jonathan Kuminga's there. Some that really look good this preseason. What are your thoughts for this whole range?
Well, speaking on MPJ, if you guys were around when Brian and I were doing our NBA final streams, you know that I staked my entire career on Michael Porter Jr. And for the most part, he did not get there. But then in the last finals game, he did get there. And if you stuck with it, then you probably did very well that night. And so that just kind of summarized, like, he's a boomer bust guy as well. You know, he could put up 20 plus points. Vegas has him for like 5.5 rebounds tonight, which is great. And so I think he's a fine play, and he's coming in for pretty decent ownership on both sites. So that's not too bad.
That's like a classic UFC thing. I never lost. I just ran out of time. Or any football or basketball game. That's what it was with MPJ. It's like I wasn't wrong. We just didn't have enough games.
Well, with MPJ too, I mean, a lot of people are. Look at Aaron Gordon's ownership, 44% on DraftKings, 75% on FanDuel, and he's definitely the better, more consistent play. But I do think Michael Porter Jr., it's just going to be more powerful when he has that ceiling game versus Aaron Gordon, given the ownership.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I would rather be on MPJ there at 28% ownership or 41% ownership at. I know he's higher priced than Eric Gordon, but Aaron Gordon as well. I would rather be on the lower owned player.
Yeah, and then speaking of other guys, you know, I mentioned Grayson Allen. He's coming in for much more ownership on FanDuel, but he's also cheaper, and I think he should be the chalk value over there as long as we know he's starting, by the way, because starting matters for Grayson Allen tonight. But 4,200 on FanDuel is $1,000 too cheap, probably, so that's a spot I'm going to look to take advantage of. And Torian Prince is another chalk value at forward. Torian Prince and Josh Okogie, they're both pretty cheap on both sides. Josh Okogie's ownership blows my mind, 40 and 50+%. But what do you think about Josh Okogie?
I was going to toss that back. I'm confused by that. Is that just like a projected minutes thing, like early season? We're playing a guy that's going to get a lot of minutes just because everyone knows that that's the golden rule. I'm struggling with that, honestly.
I mean, it kind of goes back to him being cheap. He allows us to fit in the studs. If he really plays the 28 minutes we haven't projected for, he did take a step forward in his offense last season. We saw him be more aggressive. And if you're scoring more real life points, you have a higher fantasy ceiling. And so it's probably not that bad, but I do think it's a little bit higher than it should be. And then Torian Prince, it's like this dude shot 100% from 3 in the preseason. And historically, he's been one of the worst fantasy point per minute guys in the entire NBA. And so, yeah, I mean, like, look at what 21 minutes, 3 fantasy points in one game, 23 minutes and 10 fantasy points. I would not be surprised if he put up a game like that. His job on this Lakers team is to play good defense and hit open threes. And it's basically all he's asked to do, maybe some rebounds. But that might be a trap. I'm not sure how much I'm going to get there tonight.
He's, as a Bucks fan, it's Tony Snell from years back where, I don't know, we've all seen the meme of him where 30 minutes played and then the 0-0-0 on the stat sheet. That's Torian Prince, except for really have a couple of turnovers and a couple probably fouls as well.
Yeah, and I mean, he's so cheap. He really doesn't have to do much to get there.
No.
And so he's still fine to play, but 40% on DraftKings is a little bit rich for me, but his price is incorrect. If we knew what we knew in the preseason when they made these prices, he'd be a little bit higher.
Yeah, but going back to like Grayson Allen, I just feel like in terms of safety, I guess, I know you already mentioned him for FanDuel, DraftKings, it feels like, I don't want to say he's going to 5X or even 6X, but like maybe 4.8X, like in a slate where it's ugly. Is there any safety there? I feel like there is. A couple three balls made, maybe 2 rebounds, few assists. Is that just the safe player? Is he priced up a little bit too much for DraftKings?
I think he's still a great play. We don't necessarily need a full 5X from him. I think it's definitely a decent chance. It's within his pretty middle set range of outcomes. But Grayson Allen's always been on a good team. He was on a good team on the Bucks. He's on a good team on the Suns now. And, if the field's really going to get there 2%, he's more than a 2% play.
That's why it stood out to me, is how low owned he was. It seems strange.
Yeah, I mean, he's more expensive than Torian and Josh Okogie, but if he scores 10 plus more fantasy points than them, then we're very happy to pay that 1K extra.
All right. And then since we're just talking about values, I gotta say, and like, don't throw up here. Justin Holiday, I don't know. It's just like he sucks. We know that. But he's going to play 15 minutes. He's never been a point per minute player. But at 3.2, can he give us 12 DraftKings points and give us a profitable lineup? I don't hate that. I don't, especially because you can play him guard and forward.
No, I like it. We've seen him capable of putting up 20 plus fantasy points in a game before. So, I don't mind getting there either. And then Julian Strother is kind of interesting too, along the same lines. Very similar priced.
He is.
On DraftKings anyway. He's a rookie. He had a great preseason. We'll see if he's part of the Nuggets plan for the regular rotation this year. It's a little different because I don't think MPJ played as much in the preseason. Maybe they took it easy on him, so there were more minutes available, and they're going to run the young guys out anyway. But if he gets any kind of minutes in the regular rotation, then Strother at basically min price on DraftKings is going to look good too.
And that leads me into a plug, guys. Be in the Discord chat before lock, because he is currently questionable. That is one of those situations where maybe we'll get more news, and he's projected to get 18 minutes or something like that. And then at 3.1, he becomes someone that we're looking at. We know the Denver Nuggets do tend to run out a deeper bench as opposed to some other teams. That could be something we're looking at. But once again, be in the Discord chat before lock. This season, we're going to be kind of switching in and out a lot as well. So you're going to get a lot of different takes, but they're always going to be good takes, of course, but be in there before lock. Obviously, for Occupy Fantasy members, you already know about that. If you're not Occupy Fantasy members, we're showing you guys, part of the tools here. This is kind of the simplified view of the tools, but there's plenty more in there for a bunch of other sports for betting. The lineup builder is awesome. And then we also have the daily, well, not the daily plug for NBA because news is always changing. And that's why we have the Discord chat. So do we got any more questions coming in?
So Jose Morales asked near the beginning of the stream, who are we starting our builds around? And I think we mostly answered that. Devin Booker is probably my top guard play. Jokic is going to be the top center play. Grayson Allen's my favorite value. And I think it's a pretty good start right there. You can still fit in another stud or two, get a couple mid-range guys. Chris Paul on DraftKings, we're starting our builds with as well. So.
And so let's kind of do that. I kind of like going through the process of just showing people a somewhat, it's not exactly first look build because it's an hour-ish before lineup lock or whatever, but a mid-look view, if you will. It's not going to be the final build, but I got Devin Booker, Grayson Allen, Kevin Durant. And you said, which center did you want to be on? Jokic, right?
I think Jokic. We'll see if we can. We don't want to force all these guys, but I think we have enough value. We can still get to all three of these guys and still feel pretty comfortable with our lineups.
And so you're liking Chris Paul as the guard play, correct?
I do like Chris Paul. I don't think I'm going to have him in 100% of my lineups just because the field is going to be so overweight on him. But his price is wrong. So
yeah. So Chris Paul, Devin Booker. I'm going to put Grayson Allen in there. And this is one of those situations where I mentioned I feel like Grayson Allen's super safe. Don't get me wrong. I think he has a good chance to get around 5x. But this is one of those spots where I know it's ugly and I don't really want to play him. And if it was any other slate besides a 2-game slate, we wouldn't even be looking at it. But honestly, 12 points out of Justin Holiday at 3.2 is almost just as good as 20 from Grayson Allen at 5K.
Yeah, I mean that one. It kind of depends on the studs too. If 4 studs go off tonight, then you're gonna have to find a way to squeeze them in, right? So.
I'm going to do that for this because then we have 4.8 left over. Would it be Kuminga that we'd be looking at?
Yeah, I'm interested there. Kuminga, Eric Gordon, both look fine. I mean, we have Grayson Allen. Do we have Grayson Allen in our lineup?
I took him off for Holiday just because of the pricing. I think that's what everyone's going to do as well, which is kind of the tough part, right?
We can still go to Eric Gordon at a little bit cheaper. Okay. We can play him with or without Grayson Allen. Someone else on the Suns team has to score the basketball. It's not just KD and Book. But that is something to keep in mind that we have KD and Book in our little dummy build here. Yep. And so if we can get the value play right from another team, it might be worth a little bit more than Eric Gordon. But Eric Gordon's a guy we've seen can heat up and have a large role anyway. So.
You know what? That's kind of a good point, I would say. It's that it almost feels like that's going too far. Is if we have Booker and KD to also have Eric Gordon in there, it almost feels too far because he's a volume shooter, right? Like that's how he's going to get done if Booker and KD are shooting well. It's tough for me to see. I know it's 20 points. That's not that much. 20 DraftKings points. That's not that much. But 15, if he ends up with 15 DraftKings points, I think we're up on the field if we don't play him.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, we can replace him with get Kuminga in there at a pretty similar price, who I think is going to have a larger role than he did last year. I mean, he was awesome in preseason. We're not expecting him to put up the numbers he put up in preseason, but
Yeah.
it's different than last year.
Slight caution with that. I forget who Jordan Nwora for the Bucks. Same stuff. He dominated the preseason, got traded later on that season.
Yeah.
Could potentially see that with Kuminga. I mean, he looks good when he gets the chance, but obviously you're like fifth fiddle, but I don't mind that.
One of the things about him too is that I don't think Steve Kerr was happy with his rebounding effort last season, and I mean it was only preseason, but we saw him get much better at that, and so that could be a big thing for keeping him on the court.
The extra effort was there. Where I remember at this time last year, everyone was expecting him to take that next step, and it just didn't happen. Maybe it's just the season too late.
Could be, yeah. I mean, he's going to be necessary this year, especially with Draymond out to start the season. So.
Mm-hmm. It's just tough. 4.9 left over. So we could go a cheap guard. Utility spot. Let's see. I don't know. I like Yusuf a lot at his price tag, but I know that leaves us with like 3.6 left over. And that'd be like Moses Moody, which is ugly. Don't love that. Strother, if he plays, that would be okay. I guess we got to go Gordon instead of Kuminga. Darn it.
So one thing I want to say about Moses Moody, we never build for blowouts, but on this 2-game slate, if you're making, say, 20 lineups and you want to hand build a couple lineups specifically for blowouts so you can fit in players like Moses Moody who might get more minutes in that case, just keep in mind the narrative that you're building on that lineup. And so we don't plan for blowouts. Vegas had this at a 4.5 point game. So that's the starters will be in the last minute if it's within 4.5 or whatever it is. But it's something to consider on the 2-game slate when we're trying to make a unique lineup to solo ship those big contests.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, both games are projected to be close, both in scoring, and the over and under is close for both of them. So it's not like we're favoring one game over the other.
Mm-hmm.
Taurean Prince, I feel like the move is to fade him.
I'm fine with it. Yeah. I mean,
that's why I'm not putting him in this build. Just so we're clear, guys, it's just like a fade. But I don't like Josh Okogie either. It's ugly.
See what I had showing up on my.
Yeah.
I had Dario Saric in 30% of my lineups for DraftKings as of now.
I forgot about Saric. Let's put him in there. I like that a lot. There we go. That's decent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I do think the move, though, I do think, especially having Yusuf in there for this build that I have, I don't know. I feel like having Eric Gordon in there is not correct.
Well, we have an extra 500 if there's someone else that we can put in there.
I was hoping we would get Grace, and we didn't.
100 off.
I do have a question. So for the Denver, just kind of backups, we got Christian Braun there. We also have Peyton Watson there. Peyton Watson got a little bit of hype from Michael Malone. Is he someone you'd look at, Watson specifically, if Strawthird is out to get, I don't know, a little bit more run? Or is it like just Christian Braun potentially getting 25 minutes at a cheap price tag?
I'm not quite sure. I mean, it's like with a lot of these young players, we just have to see how the rotation plays out. Mm-hmm. Like I could see him playing 12 to 15 minutes. I could see him being a did not play coach's decision. So if you guys are willing to take that risk, no one else is going to play him. He's going to be practically unknown. Then you can build the rest of your lineup as chalky as you want and still be different.
Mm-hmm. And guys, once again, it's the beginning of the season. Random stuff is going to happen. Weird stuff is going to happen. We'll see. But yeah, it's a small 2-game slate. Let's just reminder to that. Tomorrow's a big 12-game slate, and I'm pretty darn excited for that one. I already took kind of a sneak peek at some options that we have on that slate, and just based off of, once again, the props that are out there, I'm like, we're going to have some awesome plays that we can be on. So I'm excited for that one.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot more interesting than going over these 4 teams. But Chris David, do we trust Eric Gordon? I think I trust the minutes. I think the minutes will be there, and he'll have that usage. So he's a fine value play. And then thoughts on Christian Wood? I think he's too expensive, but we've seen him get there in 20 minutes before. So he would just be a high risk GPP play. I don't know that I'm really going to get there. I'd just rather pay a little bit more and get to the guys that we know are going to be on the court for 30 plus minutes.
Yeah, and we kind of mentioned maybe Jackson Hayes as he's like a similar, I shouldn't say similar-ish play, but he's so much cheaper, and he's also kind of been a point per minute player in the past. It's basically the same option, just cheaper price tag. Opens up more.
Yeah, I mean, foul trouble's a thing. If Jokic somehow puts AD in foul trouble in the first quarter, it opens up more minutes. Again, it's not something that we're going to predict, but on a 2-gamer, or Christian Wood. Yeah, it's something I think we should be keeping in mind just to help us get a few percentage more of these guys in our overall lineups if you're making 20 plus lineups.
It is funny if the Nuggets were not playing pretty much the Lakers and obviously Anthony Davis versus Jokic, I probably would have been going in on a little bit of foul narratives with that for like a backup center play today.
And one thing too, if you're hand building, so I don't think that the Lakers get blown out tonight, but it's possible. And so just make sure that you're considering, we're playing this guy, this stud from this team and this value guy from the other team. Does it make sense? Like, can we get max minutes from both of these guys in the same game? And I'm usually not concerned about the team doing the blowing out, which would be the Nuggets. I mean, maybe the Lakers blow out the Nuggets, but probably not.
So you never know. I mean, when the Lakers won the championship, wasn't their first? Didn't they get blown out in that game? Or am I remembering that wrong? Isn't that kind of? I could completely be remembering it wrong. It might have been the home opener, but I feel like that's been a trend, a championship hangover.
I don't remember. It's possible though. Yeah, we've seen it happen a few times. So, and for what it's worth, Mike Malone did say his team is not where they want to be in terms of cohesiveness and conditioning. And so that could be something to watch. Maybe they get a couple less minutes, or they just, like Eric said, they just do bad and the Lakers go off.
I don't know. I have never gone behind the Lakers hype. I know you have, obviously. I'm a little bit getting behind it this year. So
nice.
We'll see.
Nice. It's a matter of health. Just stay on the court.
It is. But they have the depth to not really push people this year. We did have one question. So does Goodwin start with Beal out? Probably not, but maybe. I doubt it. It could be news that we get before lineup lock.
It could be something because I think they were planning to start Beal at the point guard position. They've been very comfortable with Devin Booker taking the ball up though, so they could just run him at the point. And in that case, Devin Booker is an even better play than I already thought he was.
Yeah, we're not in our midseason form. That's the perfect take right there. Yeah, it's gonna be tough not to end up on Booker. We're not talking about usage too much early on in the season, but we're going to see that be a big usage bump for him when Beal's off the court. Maybe not KD, but Booker will probably see his usage get a big bump.
We got the douche in the chat, one of our Discord regulars. How you doing, man? Chuck woke up today and chose violence with the hat.
I can't even read it. Is it worth reading out loud?
Oh no, that's all he said. Just Chuck woke up and chose violence, and
it just says Warriors, right?
It just says Warriors. Yeah, no, I'm repping his rival for the day. So
we did have to bust out the future NBA championship gear for the live stream.
Hey,
I mean, you're hedging.
This was what I thought the finals matchup was going to be last season, Warriors Bucks. So maybe we'll get that this year.
That Middleton injury, man, still hurts a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think that's there we go. Tom Boyle mentioned it. So Jayhawk's going to be in the Discord chat right after this live stream is done, I think, or about after this live stream is done. So be in there if you guys are Occupy Fantasy members. If you are not, we showed you guys some of the tools throughout this video. I think when we start to get to bigger slates and whatnot, maybe we'll start showing you guys the lineup builder process part of that, or something along those lines. But with the small 2-game slate, didn't want to go too crazy. We're just excited to have NBA back, like all of you guys are. Make sure to hit the like button as well.
Yeah, and if you have any questions, you want to listen to Jayhawk's Q&A, get another third person's point of view on things for tonight, join the Discord. There's instructions in the description below. And if you have any questions, I mean, we're all pretty friendly in there. I think it's a pretty great DFS Discord, the best one I've ever been in. I've been with Occupy Fantasy for a year, and it's my favorite Discord that I've ever been in for DFS. And so join it up, get in there. Even if you don't have a question, you have an opinion on something, go ahead and throw it out. It's a good discussion point. And yeah, we'll see how we do tonight.
All right, guys, that is going to be the conclusion of this video. We appreciate everyone being in here. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. We're going to be covering this in depth this whole season for NBA DFS. You guys are going to get awesome takes, and make sure to like. Any closing thoughts?
No, just mix up the studs. If you're making a bunch of lineups like I do, just mix it up. I tend to go pretty heavy on my exposures on the players I like, but tonight it's a lot going on. If you want to go heavy, if you're right, it's going to be great. But I think mix it up. We mentioned a lot of great plays in here. I know there's a couple guys that we probably didn't. Actually, we probably talked about every single player on the slate. Yeah. So watch it back. Take our advice.
It wasn't as like this is who you need to be on. It was more game theory. For sure today, where tomorrow will be much more. This is who you play. So be ready for tomorrow.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right, that's all. Thanks for watching, guys.
Appreciate it.